Yeah, unfortunately we didn't get one of our beloved window seats. It's one of those days. Playback, you've been doing this idea of taking on classic albums and then on the encores playing, a few more hits from that artist, which is one of those wonderful ideas. When it came to Stop Making Sense though, I'm guessing that might have been a bit of a reluctant take on, because it's a huge album with a huge sound and about 25 members on stage.
It's daunting, yeah.
So when did you decide, and was it a big decision to say, let's try this monster?
I suppose what it was is that we just progressed very gradually. So the first album we did was Blonde on Blonde by Bob Dylan, so we needed a harmonica guy because I was singing but I can't play harmonica very well. So the 6-piece band, and that was easy enough. I mean, Dylan songs are quite simple. I love them, but they're very straightforward. So we just wanted to challenge ourselves with the next one. We did Bowie. And for Bowie, we're doing the album Aladdin Sane, which has these female backing vocals. It's very Exile on Main Street, very kind of big gospel sound. And so luckily the bassist was going out with one of the best singers I've ever heard. And then she's got a friend who's one of the other best singers I've ever heard. So
perfect.
Both of them came on at once. Instant magic,
Nice.
So then, with that expanded lineup, when we were coming to the next project, it's sort of like, well, what suits all of us? What suits our talents? How can we best show each other off? And I love playing funk. Dave Byrne was what got me into performing, really, And then, 2 female backing singers in that band as well. And I just thought, I'd play to all of our strengths. Be a massive challenge, but let's do it. And I get to play a synth solo on nearly every song.
Well, I was just thinking now, I was just saying before the camera, we turn on the camera, that you're basically Bernie Worrell for the night, who is the only man on the planet who makes Lee Scratch Perry look normal, because he's got a great he was from Funkadelic. His face tells you the notes are bending and where the notes are going high and low, and
yeah, that's right. You have to really move with it. You have to play
man, he's like he's plugged into the actual synth and working with it.
Yeah.
So when it came to, you guys do the proper thing, you rehearse it and you make sure you can play the songs. I used to do a similar thing with UFO, and we had this idea of a Miles Davis notion that we could just get away with, let's just all meet up on the night and see what happens, but we all should learn our part before we meet up.
Yeah.
And generally it worked, but yours is a much better idea. Let's actually rehearse it so we know it works. How long has it taken now for Stop Making Sense to make sense to you?
Oh boy, it's been a very long time. It's been 2 years.
Wow.
It's not that we were solidly rehearsing every week to get it right for 2 years, but people would be moving house, they'd be getting a promotion, going on holiday.
Losers, man.
I know, their lives.
Rock and roll isn't about jobs and holidays
and
getting
no
married in houses. You
Yeah.
should be just living in a squat with no job, no hope. Then you can rehearse all day, man.
That's the dream.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to build up to it.
Keep working.
And then, to be perfectly honest, I mean, we all have other bands as well. It's not necessarily everyone's main band. I mean, I've got an originals band, the bassist has 2 originals bands.
Right.
People, they just have other bands. But somehow just the love of this project has kept us going with it, even through all the strife. We have dropped a couple of members along the way, but we picked up a couple as well, so finally getting there. It feels good.
I did think to it, I mean, having to go full Shawadi Wadi, you need, a lot of people to recreate this particular album.
Yeah.
I mean, was it easy to sort of? You got about 8 or 9 people, I think, altogether on stage.
Yeah, the original is 9. We have 8. We're scraping by with 8. It means that we do have to drop a few keyboard parts because I don't have 10 hands.
Right.
We're getting it as close as we physically can. Yeah.
You might. I think Jerry's not busy. You might even get Jerry Harrison in to actually take up the slack. I'm sure he'd like the odd occasion to play again. So when it comes to an album that's 35 years old, I'm just trying to think, of your generation, how you kind of clicked into it. Was it that, were you already aware of the album? Was it something that you were looking around to find something interesting and happened upon it for the band?
Well, what happened with me was, I can't remember how I became aware of Once in a Lifetime, but I just saw that video on YouTube, the iconic one where he's in a suit with the glasses. And I thought, as a glasses wearer, I thought, this is great, another rock and roll nerd like me, like Elvis Costello, and, there's so few of them out there, and here's another one. I was gutted when I found out it's just a prop and he didn't need them. He doesn't wear glasses. And I think they actually suit him. I think he actually looks better with them on. But anyway, it was the way he was performing, and the movements were so jerky and nervous and fidgety, and not cool, not sexy, not any of what you're kind of trained to think rock should be about, and it just gave me a whole new angle on it, and I thought, I can do that.
Oh, we'll turn the alarm on for a second. Yeah. Rock and roll, that's alright, no worries. This should be interesting. So we'll pretend it's part of the ambience, part of the music. There you go, that's alright. So
yeah, I thought I can fake epileptic seizures on stage as well. Brilliant. Yeah, that's easy. So that got me into performing in that way. And then, as for everyone else, I don't know why it's so iconic, but it just is. It's escaped this kind of boomer curse of being kind of uncool and dad rock, you know? But yet it's classic rock as well. So my dad's generation do love it, and so do mine.
And I had that.
I even know 60-year-olds who love it.
It had a Rocky Horror effect too in Dublin, where the Ambassador played it as a late night on Fridays for years. It just was that regular thing where it just had such a fan base, and because it was almost like a party, and it was obviously dance music on the whole, it just went on forever. It just sort of had this life that went far beyond its opening weekend at box office and its chart positions and all that. Yeah. So I'm thinking with something like Talking Heads, is it I don't know, is it your own personal taste? Is it something that you lean towards, given that you said yourself with the lineup with the girls kind of leaning towards the funk and soul? I'm guessing deep down you do love the album, right? Because that's important.
Oh yeah. One of my favorite bands for sure. Yeah, I'm very funk oriented, definitely.
Right.
Yeah, funk is just better than everything else, really.
But I always think that the Talking Heads out of the CBGB generation, there was a generation that sort of treated rock like an art installation. Like the Ramones could see it as a project, and Talking Heads treated certainly that concert as an art installation piece, and it went as a piece of theatre where they went from one guy to 4 to 6 to whatever.
And this is fascinating to me because, like, in the early years of rock, it was the other way around, whereas the Yanks who were doing kind of very straightforward, I know I'm simplifying here, but very kind of, you know, heavy, earnest kind of rock, you know.
Sure.
And they wanted to change the world, and it's the Brits who are all already and kind of ironic with it, and we're not changing the world, we're just having fun at a bit of a distance, you know.
Sure.
So the Beatles do Sgt. Pepper, but they have, you know, at the end of Within You, Without You, there's laughter, you know, where they're sending themselves up.
Yeah.
And they just didn't do straight face, you know. But then somehow in the CBGB's generation that just reversed itself, and you get these very earnest, angry British punks, you know, going, you know, we hate the system and all this. And in America, it's all, they're taking the piss, a lot of them. The Ramones and.
But I think Bowie was the great example of how you know, musical genres could fit you like a costume, and you could channel a certain kind of sound and yet make it your own and be part of it. And I think his influence on people like, and they were friends, of course, through Eno, with people like David Byrne, was that it didn't have to be that you lived on a farm and therefore you sang about farm life. You could generate a certain, you know, kind of emotional connection to the abstract and you know, sort of basically play a role. And that seems to be very true in David Byrne's case with the especially with Stop Making Sense, the suit and all that. He is sort of just acting. He is just sort of playing out a kind of a neurosis and that slightly New York thing that Woody Allen would have. Where they're just a bag of nerves who don't get the girl. I think that's a big part of it too.
Well, I read one very interesting thing, which is that the Brits couldn't be authentic because they hadn't invented rock and roll. It didn't come from there. So whenever they did it, it had to be at an ironic remove, and they knew that. They were smart enough to get that, so they didn't even try and make it authentic, except Mick Jagger, you know.
Yeah, I was going to say the Stones. I think Keith is probably the only guy who would sort of feel, well, this is the real deal, which is
and
it is.
Pull it off.
Yeah, and they've become history, so it is part of the real deal now. And
absolutely, yeah. But this whole thing of you're making it your own thing, it's a bit ironic, it's a bit distant, but it's no less emotional anyway, and that's the genius of guys like Bowie. As you say, he does his plastic soul, as he calls it himself, and you like it anyway. And, Dave Byrne does the same thing. It's not this earthy James Brown sweaty funk. It's white, very you know, nervous funk.
Sure, and it is that sort of idea of almost being an installation where it's just an attempt to recreate something, but the hope is with the mistakes as well as the genius make it something brand new. So Golden Years and Fame and all that have a genuine kind of kick to them. It's not just an imitation. And anyway, before we get too nerdy, we should say April 20th. You are including some of the songs that didn't make the final cut on the album, like Izimbra and all that, because they did sort of do a longer concert than was what was released in the film, and so you've added a few cities, I think, as well. And
well, not this time round. We're going to add them in later shows, but we're keeping it just to the set list this time.
Because Izimbra's a bit of a challenge to.
Yeah, it's hard enough getting the 16 songs together. But I'm a big fan of Izimbra, and Cities is an amazing song. I can't believe it didn't make the original film, so we're going to toss it in later.
I suppose just from Playback's point of view, have you got other albums in your sights? I know that you sort of joked, or maybe not joked, that OK Computer could happen, or the LCD Sound System album might happen, but have you got certain albums you're hoping to do next?
We just noticed that we had done a 60s one, Blonde and Blonde, 70s Lad Insane, 80s this, you know, so then 90s, it would almost have to be OK Computer.
The Spice Girls album came out in the 90s. That would be.
Forgetting that.
There you go.
Yeah,
You're sorted. Sorted.
And LCD Sound System would be like a natural continuation of what we're doing now.
I think it's a talking head sound, really.
Talking heads, really.
True,
with
yeah.
A couple of extra synths.
Boom.
Yeah.
Well, we'll keep an eye. I'll link to your different social media, and you know, people can follow you later on. But absolutely looking forward to April 20th, because it is one of the great albums, and certainly one of the great live performance albums, which is kind of lends itself to the environment, of course, because you know, when you deal with Blonde and Blonde, and you're dealing with, you know, Aladdin Sane, this was an album that people loved on their, you know, to play at home. But with this particular album, it's something they love to see and love to be part of, and so I think it really lends itself. And you have the big suit.
Yeah.
Rock and roll. We'll take some pictures of you in your big suit. That'll work.